Since the earliest times of humanity, the search for the meaning of life has been one of mankind's greatest questions. Questions about our identity, origin, and destiny have accompanied us throughout history. These inquiries into the purpose of existence have led various cultures and societies to create their own spiritual paths. It is not a recent phenomenon that many of these paths have been kept secret in hidden societies, esoteric or mystical traditions. Although today, we have almost unlimited access to information, genuine spiritual knowledge often remains concealed. This leads us to reflect on the reason why. After all, if so many answers can bring us peace and inner transformation, why are these truths not available to everyone? One explanation, according to many traditions, is that such knowledge requires preparation and maturity. Spiritual wisdom, when misinterpreted or used selfishly, can cause more harm than good. Some societies, especially esoteric ones, believe that there is a responsibility in sharing this knowledge. It's like handing a sharp knife to someone who is not ready. In the wrong hands, it can cause harm. Thus, spiritual knowledge has been passed down cautiously, from mentor to disciple, requiring commitment, practice, and a genuine desire for inner transformation. What we often fail to understand is that true spiritual knowledge is not something that can be absorbed only from books or videos. It is experiential. It requires us to live its truths, to feel them in the body and soul, to face our fears and shadows. That is why this quest has been both fascinating and challenging throughout history. It is not merely an accumulation of information, but an internal journey. Throughout various times and cultures, those who held spiritual knowledge were considered guardians, protectors of wisdom that could either liberate or destroy. Often, these wise individuals were marginalized or viewed with suspicion by society. The idea that the spiritual world could be more real than the physical one is unsettling, as it challenges everything we believe we know about life. Today, this search continues. The difference is that with technological advancement and globalization, we have more access to ancient teachings than ever before. Yet paradoxically, authentic wisdom remains rare. This is because, in a world saturated with information, discerning the superficial from the profound requires wisdom and, once again, preparation. Spiritual knowledge cannot be reduced to a simple click. It requires effort, surrender, and patience. Thus, the search for spiritual knowledge is both an individual and collective challenge. Each of us, in our own way, is on this journey. The answers are waiting for those ready to receive them. But to find them, we must first accept that the path is long, full of mysteries, and that often the greatest revelations come in silence and introspection. The concept of Maya, present in Eastern traditions, especially Hinduism and Buddhism, reveals an unsettling truth. What we call reality may be a great illusion. In simple terms, Maya is the veil that prevents us from seeing the truth beyond appearances. We live in a world of forms, colors, sounds, and sensations, but these are only temporary reflections of a much deeper and permanent reality. Consider for a moment that everything you perceive with your five senses, everything you see, hear, touch, is not the ultimate reality, but merely a representation. This is what Maya teaches us. We are so immersed in our daily experiences that we forget there is something greater, something beyond the physical. This concept is powerful because it invites us to question our certainties, our way of seeing the world and life. In the ancient scriptures of India, Maya is described as a cosmic force that obscures spiritual truth, making us believe that the temporary is eternal. We are deceived by the senses, trapped in material things, and thus cannot see the essence that sustains everything. The material world, with its constant changes, is seen as a shadow play that distracts us from true reality. But what is this true reality? According to these traditions, it is spiritual, eternal, and unchanging. It is the essence behind forms, the spirit that permeates all things. For the sages who attain enlightenment, passing through Maya is awakening to this truth, realizing that the world around us is merely a fleeting illusion. It is like stepping out of a dense fog and seeing clearly for the first time. Overcoming Maya is not an easy task. Our attachment to the physical world, to our perceptions and emotions, is powerful. The human mind, accustomed to interpreting the world through the senses, resists this idea, and that is why the process of enlightenment requires discipline, meditation, and, above all, an inner transformation. It is not enough to understand Maya intellectually. one must experience the transcendence of this illusion. Many who walk this path report a sense of freedom and lightness when they begin to see beyond Maya. Suddenly, what once seemed so important, status, possessions, worldly achievements, loses its weight. The focus shifts to the eternal, the unchangeable, and life becomes a journey in search of a deeper connection with spiritual truth. Understanding Maya is an invitation to view life in a completely new way. Instead of clinging to the ephemeral, we are called to seek what is eternal. And this search begins with the simple, yet transformative realization that not everything is as it seems. What we see may not be the final reality, and in the search for this truth, we find liberation. Impermanence is a universal truth. Everything that exists is in constant change, and this idea is central to many philosophical and spiritual traditions, both Eastern and Western. In Buddhism, this doctrine is called anicca, meaning that all phenomena are transient. In the physical world, nothing lasts forever. Everything is in constant flux, and resisting this truth leads to suffering. Buddha taught that accepting impermanence is an essential step toward enlightenment. Understanding that everything that arises eventually passes helps us deal better with losses, changes, and challenges. When we accept the transience of things, we become less attached and more present. We begin to value what we have now, without the desire for everything to be permanent. In Western philosophy, the idea of constant change was also addressed by thinkers like Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher famous for saying that no one steps in the same river twice. His teaching reflects the notion that everything flows, that both the river and the person are in constant transformation. Resisting this, according to Heraclitus, is resisting the very nature of existence. This teaching brings great relief when we face difficulties. If everything is constantly changing, it also means that difficult moments, pains, and challenges are temporary. Impermanence can be seen not just as something to accept, but also as a source of hope. After all, if everything changes, today's pain can turn into tomorrow's joy. Accepting impermanence also leads to a deeper understanding of life. Instead of seeking stability in external things, such as possessions, relationships, or status, we begin to realize that true peace must be found within us. The external world is fluid, but what remains unchanged is our spiritual essence. In the West, modern philosopher Alan Watts also addressed these issues brilliantly. He often discussed the fluid nature of existence, explaining that resisting change is the source of much of our suffering. Watts encouraged his listeners to embrace life as a dynamic process, where accepting natural changes is the path to inner peace. Therefore, whether in Eastern or Western traditions, the concept of impermanence teaches us to live more lightly and wisely. When we understand that everything passes, both the good and the bad moments, we are able to embrace life in all its fullness, without the burden of attachment or the fear of change. Accepting impermanence is one of the secrets to finding balance and serenity. When we talk about the relationship between the human mind and reality, we enter deep and fascinating territory. For centuries, mystics, philosophers, and scientists have tried to understand how much our perception shapes the world around us. Quantum physics, with its discoveries about the behavior of subatomic particles, has brought forth the idea that human consciousness can, in fact, influence physical reality. The simple act of observing alters the outcome of quantum events, suggesting a connection between mind and matter. This idea is not new. Many spiritual teachings have long spoken of the mind as a powerful force capable of creating and shaping realities. In esotericism, for example, it is common to find the concept that our thoughts and intentions have a direct impact on the physical world. This is reflected in manifestation practices, where the power of intention is used to attract and shape experiences in everyday life. Modern science, particularly quantum mechanics, has added a new layer of understanding to this phenomenon. Discoveries such as the observer effect, which demonstrates that the act of observing subatomic particles can change their behavior, echo ancient mystical wisdoms that have always asserted that the material world is not as solid as it seems. This suggests that our consciousness is intimately connected to the structure of the universe. If the human mind has the power to influence reality, what does that mean for our lives? On a practical level, it invites us to pay more attention to our thoughts and intentions. If what we think and feel shapes our life experience, we can use this awareness to create a life more aligned with our desires and goals. Through practices like meditation, visualization, and mindfulness, we can begin to shape our reality from within. However, this idea also brings responsibility. If we have the power to shape reality, we also have the responsibility to be mindful of how we use that power. Negative thoughts, fears, and limiting beliefs can create blocks and obstacles in our lives. Similarly, positive thoughts aligned with our true desires can open doors and create new opportunities. This interconnection between mind and reality leads us to a deeper understanding of life and the universe. When we realize that everything is interconnected, we begin to see life as a vast web of influences and interactions. Our actions, thoughts, and emotions not only affect us, but also resonate around us, impacting the environment and the people we interact with. This leads us to cultivate more responsibility and awareness in our choices. Thus, understanding this connection between mind and reality is one of the keys to living more consciously and intentionally. By becoming more aware of what we think, feel, and believe, we make space for a fuller life, where we can co-create our own reality with purpose and spiritual alignment. The transience of life is one of the most difficult concepts to accept, but also one of the most liberating. Everything we know and experience is impermanent. Happy moments, achievements, relationships, and even challenges. When we cling to things and resist change, we create inner tension that inevitably leads to suffering. However, by accepting impermanence, we can free ourselves from this struggle and find deeper peace. Buddhist philosophy teaches us that the key to liberation lies in accepting the transience of all things. Buddha emphasized that suffering arises from attachment and aversion. We cling to what brings us pleasure and try to avoid what causes us pain. But since everything is impermanent, trying to hold on to something or avoid change is a losing battle. True peace comes in recognizing that everything passes, and it is in this constant flow that the beauty of life resides. Accepting transience helps us develop a more resilient mindset. When we understand that difficulties are temporary, we face challenges with more serenity. On the other hand, we also learn to savor the good moments without clinging to them, because we know they are part of a natural cycle. This view teaches us to live in the present, appreciating what life offers us now, without the anxiety of wanting to prolong pleasant experiences indefinitely. In practice, this means living more lightly. When we stop fighting the inevitable, the changes of life, we begin to feel more at peace. Life becomes more fluid, less controlled, but also more authentic. Expectations of how things should be give way to the acceptance of how things are. This acceptance is not passive, but rather a wise surrender to the natural flow of existence. On the other hand, accepting impermanence reminds us to value what is truly important. When we realize that nothing lasts forever, we start to give more value to our connections, experiences, and the learning we acquire throughout life. Instead of seeking stability in external things, we begin to cultivate our inner peace and spiritual connection, for that is what remains, even amid changes. Many spiritual traditions, including Taoism and Christianity, teach us the importance of finding a spiritual anchor amidst life's tides. These anchors, which can be faith, meditation, or the practice of loving others, help us maintain balance when everything around us seems uncertain. By detaching from what is transient, we discover that true security lies within. By embracing transience, we live with more freedom. The bonds of fear and attachment weaken, and we allow ourselves to flow with the changes, trusting that in the end, what is essential always remains. This is one of life's greatest lessons. Accepting impermanence brings us true inner peace. Taoist philosophy offers us a beautiful and profound concept called Wu Wei, which can be translated as effortless action or non-action. However, Wu Wei does not advocate for inertia or passivity, but rather a way of acting that is in complete harmony with the natural flow of life. It is about finding the balance between doing and allowing, between effort and acceptance. Imagine a leaf floating in a river. It doesn't fight against the current. It simply lets itself be carried, trusting the natural path of the water's flow. This is Wu Wei, a way of being in the world without constant resistance, without forcing outcomes, but also without abandoning action. It is about learning to act fluidly, without pushing too hard, allowing things to happen as they are meant to happen. Often, we believe that we will only achieve our goals if we fight, work tirelessly, or try to control every detail of our lives. But this approach can lead to exhaustion, frustration, and even distance us from our true purposes. Wu Wei teaches us that there is wisdom in acting with lightness, in trusting the natural course of things, without trying to control everything. Practicing Wu Wei means being attentive to the present moment and acting when the time is right. It is not about giving up or doing nothing, but about acting spontaneously and intuitively, respecting the rhythms of life. Often, the most effective action is the one that comes effortlessly, when we are in tune with what surrounds us. It is like a fisherman casting his net into the sea. He waits for the right moment to pull it in, without anxiety or rush. The Tao Te Ching, one of the foundational texts of Taoism, teaches that the wise act effortlessly because they are in harmony with the Tao, the natural flow of the universe. They do not hurry, do not try to force things to happen. Instead, they observe, wait for the appropriate moment, and act with simplicity and precision. Wu Wei is, essentially, a dance with life, where we learn to act without resistance. This approach can be especially helpful in times of difficulty. When we encounter obstacles, our natural tendency is to fight against them, to try to force a solution. But sometimes the best response is to stop, observe, and wait for the right moment to act. Like a tree bending in the wind, adapting to the force of the gusts, Wu Wei teaches us to be flexible and resilient without losing our essence. Practicing Wu Wei is living more lightly and fully. By learning to trust the natural flow of life and acting effortlessly, we find inner peace that transcends the anxiety of control. Life becomes more fluid and teaches us that sometimes the best way forward is to simply let ourselves be carried by the universe's current. The hero's journey is one of the most powerful archetypes present in various cultures and mythologies around the world. It is the story of an ordinary person who is called to an extraordinary adventure, faces challenges, meets mentors, and returns transformed. This archetype also symbolically reflects the path of spiritual awakening, a journey inward towards self-knowledge and enlightenment. At the beginning of the journey, the hero, like us, is in their comfort zone. They live an ordinary life with their routines and beliefs. However, something happens, a call to adventure. This call can be an external event, such as a crisis, a loss, or an unexpected challenge, but it can also be an internal call, such as restlessness, a desire for something more, for a deeper meaning in life. Initially, the hero resists the call. This resistance is something we all face when we are challenged to step out of our comfort zone. The unknown is frightening, and the spiritual journey requires us to confront our shadows, fears, and limitations. However, the hero eventually accepts the call, beginning their adventure into the unknown. During their journey, the hero encounters mentors, spiritual guides, or masters who help them better understand the challenges ahead. These mentors offer wisdom, tools, and support. On the spiritual journey, our mentors can be books, teachers, therapists, or even friends. They help us see life from a broader perspective and understand that challenges are opportunities for growth. Overcoming challenges is a crucial part of this journey. The hero faces trials, symbolic monsters, and obstacles that test their courage and determination. These challenges are, in fact, internal aspects: fears, limiting beliefs, traumas, and attachments. Overcoming them requires not only physical strength, but also emotional and spiritual strength. Each challenge overcome is a transformation, a symbolic death of an old part of oneself, making way for the new. After facing their greatest challenges, the hero returns home transformed. They are no longer the same person they were when they began the journey. What they bring back are not material trophies, but wisdom, clarity, and a new understanding of themselves and the world. On the spiritual journey, this reflects awakening, a new way of seeing life, more connected with essence and spiritual truth. This hero's journey is, in essence, the journey of all of us. We all face moments of crisis and challenges that take us out of comfort. We are all called, at some point, to seek something deeper and truer. And as we overcome these challenges, we return transformed, ready to live more authentically and consciously. The hero's journey is the journey of spiritual awakening, a path that leads us to find our inner truth. One of the most fascinating ideas in esotericism and spiritual traditions is the principle that, as above, so below, as within, so without. This concept, present in Hermetic philosophy and various other traditions, suggests that the external universe, the macrocosm, is a reflection of the internal universe, the microcosm. This means that what happens inside of us is deeply connected to what happens outside of us, and vice versa. Imagine the human being as a mirror of the cosmos. Just as the universe is in constant motion and evolution, our inner being also undergoes transformations. This interconnection invites us to look at the world and our lives holistically. When we understand that the microcosm and macrocosm are reflections of each other, we begin to see that studying one can offer valuable insights into the other. For example, many practitioners of astrology believe that the movements of celestial bodies influence our lives. But, on a deeper level, what this really means is that the external universe reflects internal processes we are experiencing. Astrology, in this sense, is not about predictions, but about helping us better understand our life cycles, transformations, and the patterns that shape our existence. This relationship between the micro and macro is also present in Eastern traditions. In Hinduism, there is the concept of Atman, the individual soul, and Brahman, the supreme universal reality. Hindu teachings assert that Atman and Brahman are one. The microcosm and macrocosm are expressions of the same divine essence. By understanding this unity, we dissolve the illusion of separation and connect with the truth that everything is interconnected. In Buddhism, the principle of dependent origination also reflects this idea. According to this teaching, nothing exists in isolation. Everything is interconnected. Every phenomenon arises in relation to other phenomena, and every action generates a reaction that impacts the whole. This understanding leads us to a more empathetic and compassionate view of the world, recognizing that our individual actions have far-reaching repercussions. The Jewish mystical tradition, Kabbalah, also explores the interconnection between the microcosm and macrocosm. The tree of life, a central symbol in Kabbalah, represents the structure of the universe as well as the internal structure of the human being. Meditating on the tree of life is a spiritual exercise that allows us to explore both cosmic and personal dimensions, revealing the interdependence between the divine and the earthly. This hermetic principle also echoes in the discoveries of modern physics, especially in the phenomenon of quantum entanglement. Quantum physics shows that subatomic particles can remain connected, even over great distances, suggesting that the universe is deeply interconnected at levels we do not yet fully understand. In short, this interconnection between the microcosm and macrocosm teaches us that we are not isolated beings. We are part of a larger web where every thought, action, and feeling reverberates in the whole. Modern life, with its constant hustle and endless flow of information, often disconnects us from ourselves. Many times, we find ourselves immersed in worries about the future or trapped in regrets about the past, while the present, the only truly real moment, passes unnoticed. In this context, the practice of conscious presence becomes a powerful tool to transform our relationship with life and achieve inner peace. Conscious presence, or mindfulness, is the practice of being fully in the present moment, without judgment, simply observing and accepting what is happening inside and outside of us. By practicing presence, we become more aware of our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations. Instead of being automatically carried away by emotional reactions or repetitive thought patterns, we begin to observe ourselves more clearly and objectively. This practice has its roots in ancient spiritual traditions, especially Buddhism, where mindfulness meditation is one of the pillars for achieving enlightenment. However, conscious presence transcends any religion or dogma. It is a human skill that everyone can develop. By cultivating mindfulness, we begin to realize that much of our suffering comes from our resistance to the present moment. When we are truly present, the power of negative thoughts and worries diminishes. This happens because most of our anxieties are tied to something that has not yet happened, future, or something that has already passed, past. By focusing on the here and now, we find a clarity that frees us from these worries. The present is a place of peace, where there is no room for fear, because fear lives in psychological time, in what was or what will be. The practice of presence also connects us more deeply with our daily experiences. Simple things, like a walk outdoors, a warm bath, or a meal in silence, become opportunities for appreciation and gratitude. When we are present, we start to see life through a new lens, noticing the beauty in the most common moments that often go unnoticed when we are distracted. One of the most powerful effects of conscious presence is its ability to interrupt cycles of negative thinking. When we recognize that our thoughts are not absolute truth, but merely mental patterns that arise and pass, we stop identifying so much with them. This allows us to question self-destructive thoughts and consciously choose how we want to respond to them. Presence not only brings us inner peace, but also transforms our relationships. When we are present with another person, We truly listen to what they are saying, without projecting our own worries or distractions. This creates more authentic and profound connections, allowing us to relate to others more compassionately and lovingly. Ultimately, living with full presence frees us from the tyranny of time. We begin to experience life as it is, a series of unique moments, each with its own beauty and meaning. This practice leads us to live more consciously, without being carried away by the distractions and anxieties of everyday life. The peace we seek outside of ourselves, in things or achievements, is found within, in the simple act of being present. Gratitude is one of the most transformative practices on the path of spiritual awakening. When we cultivate gratitude in a genuine way, not just occasionally, but as a constant attitude, we completely change how we experience life. Gratitude teaches us to appreciate what we already have, rather than focusing on what we lack. It raises our consciousness to a new level, connecting us to the abundance and beauty that surround us. Contrary to what many believe, gratitude is not a passive practice, but an active choice. It is a decision to look at life with eyes that recognize blessings, even in the midst of difficulties. When we practice gratitude, we are not ignoring the challenges or sufferings of life, but we are choosing to focus on what still sustains us, on what brings us joy and meaning. This practice has a profound impact on our mental and emotional health. Scientific studies show that people who practice gratitude regularly tend to have higher levels of well-being, fewer symptoms of depression, and a more optimistic view of life. This occurs because gratitude helps shift the mind's focus. Instead of fixating on what is missing, we concentrate on what we already have. And this simple act of changing perspective creates an immediate sense of fulfillment. On the spiritual path, gratitude goes beyond simply recognizing the good things we have. It becomes a practice of acceptance and trust in the universe. By being grateful, even for difficulties, we acknowledge that everything that happens in our lives has a greater purpose, even if we do not immediately understand it. Gratitude, in this sense, is an act of faith, a trust that at some level, everything is happening as it should. Mystics from various spiritual traditions have always spoken about the power of gratitude as a way to elevate the soul. Rumi, the famous Sufi poet, said that wearing gratitude as a cloak will make everything around you beautiful. And this is a profound truth. When we are in a state of gratitude, our perception of the world changes. Colors seem more vibrant, sounds softer, and even challenges seem less daunting because we are anchored in a sense of presence and acceptance. The practice of gratitude leads us to be more aware of the present moment. When we are grateful, we are not stuck in the past or anxious about the future. We are completely immersed in the now. And it is in this state of presence that we find true peace. Gratitude teaches us to see life as a gift, to appreciate every experience, every person, and every moment as something unique and precious. As gratitude becomes part of who we are, it ceases to be just a mental exercise and becomes a way of living. We become more generous, more open, and more connected to the flow of life. We realize that the universe constantly offers us opportunities to learn and grow, and that even challenges are disguised gifts, helping us to evolve spiritually. And when we live like this, in a state of gratitude, life transforms into a journey of joy and purpose. Frustration is a common emotion for all of us. It arises when things do not go as we expected, or when we encounter obstacles that seem insurmountable. On the spiritual path, frustration can frequently appear, especially when we feel that we are not progressing as fast as we would like. However, learning to deal with frustration is an essential part of spiritual growth. Often, frustration is born from internal resistance to circumstances. We want things to be different from what they are, and when that does not happen, we feel stuck or blocked. But the truth is that frustration, when consciously faced, can be a valuable teacher. It teaches us about patience, resilience, and the art of letting go of control. In Taoism, there is a beautiful analogy that compares a human being to a river. The river flows toward the ocean, but along the way, it encounters rocks, curves, and obstacles. The river does not fight these challenges. It goes around them, flows around them, always in motion, always adapting. This is a powerful lesson on how to deal with frustration. Instead of fighting obstacles, we must learn to flow with them, trusting that we are always moving forward, even if the path is not straight. The practice of overcoming frustration begins with acceptance. Accepting that sometimes things do not go as planned is the first step in releasing the tension that frustration creates. This does not mean that we should give up on our goals or stop trying, but rather that we should adopt a more flexible and open attitude. Often, frustration arises because we are fixated on a single outcome, but the universe may have other plans for us, plans that are often better than we could have imagined. One of the deepest lessons that frustration offers us is humility. It reminds us that we are not in control of everything, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is surrender to the flow of life. This is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. When we allow ourselves to let go of control, we make room for new possibilities and creative solutions that we may never have considered. The process of dealing with frustration also teaches us about divine timing. Many times, we feel ready for the next step, but the universe has its own rhythm. This can be extremely frustrating, but over time, we learn that every experience has its proper time to happen. By trusting in this timing, we develop patience and a deeper trust in the process of life. Finally, overcoming frustration helps us develop a lighter and more playful attitude toward life. When we stop taking everything so seriously, we begin to view challenges as opportunities for learning, not as insurmountable obstacles. Frustration ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally on our spiritual path, helping us grow and strengthen internally. True spiritual knowledge is much more than a collection of teachings or practices. It is a key that, when used correctly, can open doors to profound transformation, both on a personal and collective level. This transformation, however, is not automatic. It requires us to integrate this knowledge into our daily lives, living in accordance with the truths we have discovered. On a personal level, spiritual knowledge allows us to see beyond the illusions and limitations of the material world. It helps us understand that we are much more than our physical bodies or social roles. When we begin to connect with this truth, we start living with more authenticity, less fear, and more purpose. Spiritual knowledge frees us from the prison of the ego and reconnects us with our divine essence. This process of personal transformation is the first step, but it does not end there. As we transform internally, we also begin to impact the world around us. Spiritual knowledge teaches us that everything is interconnected and that our actions, thoughts, and intentions have a profound effect on the collective. When we heal, when we become more conscious and loving, we also help elevate collective consciousness. This is one of the reasons why spiritual knowledge has been so zealously guarded throughout history. The ancients knew that true wisdom has the power to change lives and entire societies. That is why it was protected and passed down with care, from master to disciple. However, today, with the world rapidly transforming, this knowledge is becoming increasingly accessible. And this is a blessing, but also a responsibility. Living according to spiritual knowledge means understanding that we are not separate from others. Personal and collective transformation are intimately linked. By healing our internal wounds, we help heal the wounds of the world. By developing compassion and empathy, we contribute to creating a more just and harmonious society. This is the true spiritual revolution, a transformation that begins in the individual, but reverberates throughout the collective. Collective transformation is possible when each individual takes on their spiritual responsibility. This does not mean we need to become perfect, but that we need to be committed to our own growth and evolution. By doing so, we inspire others to do the same. And gradually, a movement of spiritual awakening begins to form, where the old structures of fear and separation start to crumble. This spiritual revolution is not something that happens overnight, but it is a continuous process. Each act of love, each moment of presence, and each conscious choice we make contributes to the creation of a new world. And in this sense, spiritual knowledge is a powerful key. It gives us the tools to transform not only our own lives, but also the world around us. Ultimately, true spiritual knowledge reminds us that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. It teaches us to live with purpose, to serve the greater good, and to seek unity amidst diversity. When we live according to these truths, we become agents of transformation, both in our personal lives and in the world as a whole.